Hi, guys. How are you today? I hope that you're having the day that you deserve. My name is Carly, and I am the host of the serial Zodiac, and I will be here for you every other Thursday. With that being said, let's jump right into today's story. Have you ever wondered why serial killers like to kill? Well, in the word of San Francisco's most notorious serial killer, he liked doing it simply because it was fun, and it showed. Because not only was he exceptionally good at killing, but he also managed to never get caught to this day. I'm talking about the Zodiac Killer, a mysterious man who claimed to have killed 37 people in Northern California. I mean, his killings were so brutal that he was compared to Jack the Ripper. But he wasn't just killing people, he was out here openly admitting to his crimes in the form of letters. Now, you must be thinking, that would have made it much easier for authorities to catch him, right? Wrong. In the end, all that was left was questions. What was motivating him to kill? How did he manage to get away so many times? We'll figure all of that out once we dive into how he committed his murders and the crazy stuff that came along with these murders. The night of December 20th, 1968, was the night that the Zodiac Killer decided to begin his killing spree. Betty Lou Jensen and David Arthur Faraday, both innocent high school students, were out on a date. They were headed to a Christmas concert at Hogan High School, which was just a stone's throw away from Jensen's home in Benciana. As the evening passed, the young couple stopped at a local restaurant before going out to Lake Herman Road. But it wasn't just any random road. This was a secluded lover's lane, known for its romantic allure. Little did they know that this lovely setting would soon become the scene of a heinous crime. Around 10:15 p.m., Faraday parked his mother's Rambler in a gravel turnout, nestled in the quiet darkness of the night. It was the perfect spot for young lovers seeking some alone time on their own. But as the clock ticked past 11 p.m., their evening turned problematic. Their lifeless bodies were discovered by Stella Borges, a nearby resident, and the Solano County Sheriff's Department launched an investigation. But the trail of clues led to dead ends, leaving the case shrouded in mystery. Author Robert Graysmith, armed with forensic data, pieced together a theory of what probably went down that night. He speculated that another car had pulled into the turnout, lurking in the shadows like a predator laying in wait, as Faraday and Jensen sat unsuspecting in their Rambler. The killer probably made his move. He probably ordered the couple to get out of the car, after which he shot them. Faraday fell victim to a single shot to the head, while Jensen, in a desperate bid for survival, fled into the darkness. But if he thought that he would get away, he was wrong. Zodiac pursued Jensen mercilessly, firing 5 shots into her back as she tried to escape. Her lifeless body was found 28 feet from the car, and just like that, the killer vanished into the night. At that time, people saw this as a tragic, brutal crime against young people, but nobody was prepared for what was about to happen next. Nothing more happened until 6 months later, when the streets of Vallejo fell victim to one of the Zodiac's killings on July 4th, 1969. Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were both together in the Blue Rock Springs Park, seated in their car and enjoying their time together. As the clock struck midnight, a second car pulled in with them. Moments later, the driver came out, a shadowy figure holding a flashlight and a 9mm Luger, making his intent crystal clear. He was there to cause them harm, and he wasn't going to pretend otherwise. With a blinding flash of light, the killer unleashed gunfire upon Ferrin and Mageau. 5 rounds pierced into the darkness, finding their mark with deadly precision, leaving both victims gravely wounded. But that wasn't the end of it. Zodiac was absolutely brutal. He returned just to unleash a final barrage of bullets before vanishing into the darkness. The next morning, not only were the bodies of Ferrin and Mageau discovered, but a phone call to the Vallejo Police Department claimed responsibility for the attack, along with the murders of Jansen and Faraday months earlier. Police traced the call to a phone booth, mere blocks from the scene of the crime. And despite the valiant efforts of medical personnel, Ferrin gave in to her injuries. But miraculously, Mageau clung to life and managed to recall the attacker's details from the night of the attack. He was described as a white male, late 20s to early 30s, but despite the clues, he remained elusive. However, soon things changed. The killer now began to drop hints all over the place, almost like he was challenging the authorities to try and catch him. On August 1st of 1969, across 3 major newspapers, ominous letters arrived, each bearing the hallmark of the Zodiac Killer. The letters talked about the killings at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs, along with a cryptic message that supposedly contained the killer's identity in secret. Written in a manner described by experts as benefiting someone you would expect to be brooding and isolated, these letters came with a demand to publish his cryptogram on the front page. This was an ultimatum. Either the newspapers comply or face even more killings. Despite law enforcement's skepticism of the letter's authenticity, the Chronicle took the risk, publishing a segment of the cryptogram. Yet, as the ink dried on the newspaper, Vallejo Police Chief Jack E. Stilts remained unconvinced, challenging the killer to provide further evidence of his guilt. In a twist, the examiner received a follow-up letter signed with the Zodiac. For the first time, the killer chose to reveal his identity through this alias, taunting authorities with cryptic details of the murders not yet discussed in the public. So one thing was clear. These letters weren't just part of the prank, but were written by the killer himself. Amidst the chaos, a glimmer of hope emerged from a very unlikely source. Donald and Betty Hardin cracked the cryptogram, which referenced the most dangerous game, a tale of predation and cruelty. Yet, despite the breakthrough, the identity of the Zodiac Killer remained shrouded in mystery, and the killings continued. On September 27th, 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were out for a picnic at Lake Berryessa. Both of them were students at the Pacific Union College and had no idea that there was a sinister figure lurking in the shadows, watching them from a distance. Not only was he clad in an executioner's hood, but he was also armed with a .45 caliber gun. Approaching the couple, the Zodiac Killer claimed to be a fugitive from a distant jail where he had killed a guard and stolen a car. Later, he bound Hardnell and Shepard with a plastic clothesline, and what began as a bizarre robbery swiftly executed into a nightmare. The killer pulled out a knife, plunging it into the flesh of his helpless victims. Hardnell endured 6 agonizing wounds, while Shepard suffered 10. With ruthless efficiency, the killer etched cryptic symbols into Hardnell's car door. And as it got darker, he made a call to the Napa County Sheriff's Department, confessing to the crime before vanishing into the night. The discovery of the victims by a father and son fishing nearby sparked a frantic race against time as law enforcement officers rushed to the scene. Despite their efforts, Shepard slipped into a coma, succumbing to her injuries 2 days later, while Hardnell fought for his life and made it through. For Detective Ken Narlow, who was given the task of unraveling the mysteries of this brutal attack, the pursuit of justice became a lifelong obsession. From the moment he was assigned to the case until his retirement in 1987, Narlow tirelessly pursued every lead, determined to bring closure to the victims and their loved ones. But in the end, it led to nothing. In the meantime, the Zodiac Killer struck once again. On the night of October 11th, 1969, the Zodiac Killer claimed his next victim when Paul Stein, a taxi driver, crossed paths with him. As Stein's cab was driving down the streets, a mysterious passenger climbed aboard at the intersection of Mason and Gurney Street. He requested a journey to Washington and Maple Street, but the passenger's true motives remained concealed as the taxi veered off course, stopping at Cherry Street instead. What the driver didn't know was that the passenger was armed with a deadly 9mm handgun, which unleashed a single fatal shot to Stein's head. He then seized Stein's wallet and car keys and tore a bloody remnant of fabric from his shirt, leaving behind a scene of horror. Across the street, 3 teenagers saw what happened and frantically called the authorities as the killer meticulously wiped down the cab. He vanished into the darkness. But what if I told you that the Zodiac Killer was this close to being caught? Responding to the call, patrol officers Folk and Zims came across a suspicious figure just blocks away from the crime scene. Despite the proximity, confusion clouded the pursuit as conflicting descriptions blurred the lines of investigation. A letter received by the Chronicle just days later bore the mark of the killer and hinted at even more sinister plans, including a threat to target innocent schoolchildren. As the investigation unfolded, a team of determined detectives, led by Armstrong and Toshi, began a serious pursuit of the Zodiac Killer. Armed with composite sketches and unwavering determination, they sifted through an array of suspects, each one a potential link to the elusive killer. But things were only getting worse. In the dead of the night, on October 22nd, 1969, Zodiac shook Oakland once again. At precisely 2 a.m., he called the Oakland Police Department, demanding the presence of either F. Lee Bailey or Melvin Bellini on a live talk show. As dawn broke, Bellini stepped into the spotlight, hoping to unravel the mystery that shrouded the Zodiac's identity. But the encounter proved to be a twisted game of cat and mouse with no real developments, as the caller, now known as Sam, danced around the truth, his true intentions never revealed. Despite Bellini's efforts to coax information from the caller, the mission arranged on Mission Street in Dale City ended in disappointment, as Zodiac failed to appear. The identity of the caller was later traced back to a mental patient named Eric Willie. But the Zodiac's terror was far from over. On November 8th, a cryptic message arrived bearing the mark of the Zodiac's hand, named Z340. This cipher remained a puzzle for over 51 years until a team of interpretive investigators led by David, Sam, and Gerald Van finally cracked its code. The decoded message painted a portrait of a man consumed by madness and delusion, denying any connection to the caller known as Sam, and embracing the idea of death with resignation. Despite the breakthrough, the message offered no new leads to the Zodiac's true identity. Undeterred, the killer continued to taunt law enforcement, mailing a 7-page letter on November 9th, claiming a chilling encounter with police just moments before the murder of Paul Stine. As the anniversary of his 2 murders loomed, the Zodiac once again reached out to Bellini, his letter dripping with desperation and madness. At this point, it became clear that whoever Zodiac was, he was either way too smart to be caught or just mentally unstable. While the exact number of his victims and how long he was out there killing people remain a matter of debate, several other murders have been connected with the Zodiac Killer. In Robert Graysmith's 1986 book, Zodiac, 49 victims were attributed to the Zodiac, though some connections have since been debunked by investigators. Among these is suggestion by local historian Christy Hawthorne that the Zodiac may have been responsible for the 1962 murder of cab driver Raymond Davis in Oceanside, California. Just before the grisly event, calls were made to the police, foretelling a sinister plot that would unfold. Bill Baker of Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department also speculates that the Zodiac may have been behind the 1963 murders of young couple Robert George Domingos and Linda Faye Edwards, whose lives were cut short on a beach near Lompoc. The brutal nature of their deaths bears an uncanny resemblance to the Zodiac's usual killing style. But that's not all. Zodiac's traces were also found in the 1964 slayings of newlywed Johnny Ray Swindle and Joyce Ann Swindle in San Diego. They were shot from a distance while strolling along Ocean Beach. But one particular case became quite famous at the time. On October 30th, 1966, 18-year-old Cherry Jo Bates, a student at Riverside City College, was brutally murdered near the campus library annex. Found dead the next morning, Bates had been viciously beaten and stabbed, while her Volkswagen had been tampered with. A cryptic, typewritten confession received by authorities a month later only deepened the mystery, with the author claiming responsibility for Bates' deaths and ominously hinting at more to come. Fast forward to April 30th, 1967, the Bates family, along with the Riverside police and local press, received nearly identical handwritten letters. But decades later, things became clear. In August 2021, the author of these letters was identified via DNA analysis, which confirmed that he was not the infamous predator, but rather a troubled teenager seeking attention through a distasteful hoax. In June 1967, the Zodiac's shadow continued to loom over the murders of Eden Molona Martinez and Furman Rodriguez on Vallesos Road in Alamine County. Ordered out of their car, the couple was brutally shot, mirroring the Zodiac's trademark ruthlessness. The tableau continued with the 1970 murders of John Franklin Hood and Sandra Garcia on East Beach in Santa Barbara. Their bodies were discovered bearing the hallmarks of a savage attack. Traces of the Zodiac's presence were also found in the death of Police Sergeant Richard Phillip, or Rich, in 1970, who was gunned down in his squad car in San Francisco. Though hints suggested a connection to the Zodiac, concrete evidence remained elusive. The tide of things changed on March 13th, 1971, when the Los Angeles Times received a letter from the Zodiac himself, acknowledging the police's role in uncovering his Riverside activity, but cryptically alluding to more sinister deeds lurking beneath the surface. Another harrowing encounter unfolded on the night of March 22nd, 1970, when Kathleen Johns found herself and her 10-month-old daughter at the mercy of a mysterious stranger while driving from San Bernardino to Paloma, which began as a seemingly innocuous offer to help quickly turned into a nightmare as Johns realized she was in the clutches of a potential abductor. Eventually, she managed to escape, but continued to believe that it was the Zodiac Killer who had captured her. Meanwhile, in the case of Donna Lass, a registered nurse who vanished without a trace from Lake Tahoe on September 6, 1970, added yet another dimension to the mystery of this killer. A cryptic postcard received by the Chronicle on March 22, 1971, hinted at the Zodiac's involvement. But Lass's fate remained unknown until 1987, when a human skull found near California State Route 20 was identified as hers through DNA analysis. In 1970, the Zodiac Killer continued to torment authorities with his cryptic messages, keeping California trapped in fear. On April 20th, 1970, a letter surfaced bearing a cipher and a declaration. My name is blank. The Zodiac, denying involvement in a recent police station bombing, proclaimed the allure of targeting law enforcement, boasting how there is more glory in killing a cop than a Sid. The Zodiac even detailed plans for a school bus bombing, illustrated with a deadly diagram and a taunting equation. Equals 10 SP SFPD equals 0. Days later, on April 28, 1970, a greeting card arrived at the Chronicle, promising a blast and demanding publication of the Zodiac's words in exchange for sparing innocent lives. The Zodiac's appetite for infamy was evident, urging the public to sport Zodiac batons as a symbol of his influence. June 26, 1970, brought another letter, this time with a claim of a fatal shooting, possibly tied to the murder of SFPD Sergeant Richard. Accompanying the letter was a cryptic roadmap hinting at hidden horrors and a buried bomb yet to be uncovered. Despite the Zodiac's promises, the bomb's location remained a mystery, and to this day, the code is uncracked. July 24, 1970, saw the Zodiac talking about his abduction of Kathleen Johns, adding another victim to his tally. 2 days later, a letter arrived adorned with references to the Macchiano, the Zodiac's twisted imagination, spinning plans of torture in paradise. The Zodiac's signature cross circle was present on the letter as always. As the year drew to a close, a blood-stained card arrived at the Chronicle on October 7, 1970. Its cryptic message pieced together from the newspaper clippings. 13 holes pierced in the card, leaving a puzzle for authorities to unravel. But there was more to come. On October 27, 1970, Paul Avery, a journalist, found himself targeted when he received a Halloween card adorned with the Zodiac's signature crisscross circle symbol and a forbearing message. Peekaboo, you're doomed. Threat taken seriously by Avery and the public alike thrust the case back into the spotlight, dominating the front page of the Chronicle. As the game unfolded, Avery stumbled upon a revelation. An anonymous letter delivered shortly after the Halloween card drew parallels between the Zodiac's actions and the unsolved Bates murder in Riverside. Avery's exposé, published on November 16, 1970, reignited public fascination with the elusive killer. Yet, Just when the world thought the Zodiac had vanished into the shadows, a new letter arrived at the Chronicle on January 29, 1974, praising the film The Exorcist as a work of satire. The Zodiac added a cryptic verse from the Mikado and an enigmatic symbol, leaving researchers puzzled. The letter, signed with a chilling score of me equals 37, SFPD equals 0, hinted at the killer's continued presence. Letters bearing resemblance to the Zodiac's style continued to surface, fueling speculation about the killer's identity. A letter postmarked February 14, 1974, hinted at connections to the Symbionese Liberation Army, while another on May 8th of 1974 criticized the movie Badlands in a tone reminiscent of the Zodiac's earlier communications. Yet the waters grew murkier still. On April 24th, 1978, a letter initially deemed authentic was later exposed as a hoax, casting doubt on the authenticity of other communications. Allegations swirled around Dave Toshi, an SFPD detective involved in the case, but he vehemently denied any wrongdoings. Then, in a stunning twist, a forgotten Christmas card resurfaced in 2007, reigniting hope for answers. Postmarked from 1990 and containing a photocopy of postal keys, the card bore resemblances to the Zodiac's handwriting. However, forensic analysis yielded inconclusive results, leaving experts divided and the truth unknown. Among the most notorious suspects who were thought to be the Zodiac was author Lee Allen. In the book Zodiac, author Graysmith painted Allen, who passed away in 1992, as a prime suspect based on circumstantial evidence. Despite being under scrutiny since the early days of the investigation, definitive evidence against Allen remained elusive. While some detectives, including Dave Toshi, believed Allen to be the prime suspect, evidence ultimately failed to incriminate him conclusively. Allen's connection to the Zodiac case was rife with coincidences. His presence near the Lake Berryessa attack site in 1969 and his alarming statements reported by his friend Donald Chesney raised eyebrows. Moreover, Allen's troubled past, including a dishonorable discharge from the Navy and allegations of sexual misconduct, added layers to the suspicion. A pivotal moment arrived in July 1992 when victim Mike Maho identified Allen as his attacker, only 2 days before Allen's death. However, doubts persisted, with the witnesses questioning Allen's physical description compared to the Zodiac's, and discrepancies in voice recognition. Circumstantial evidence further intertwined Allen with the Zodiac's activities. A royal typewriter found during a search of Allen's house matched the one used to type a letter from the Zodiac. Allen's possession of a Zodiac brand wristwatch and his proximity to the Zodiac's crime scenes fueled speculation. The introduction of DNA analysis injected new hope into the investigation. However, comparisons between Allen's DNA and that from the Zodiac letters and envelopes yielded no conclusive matches, excluding him as a contributor. Then, in October of 2021, the Casebreakers, which was a team comprising of over 40 former law enforcement investigators, military intelligence officers, and journalists claimed to have unmasked the elusive killer. Their target was Gary Francis Poche, who passed away in 2018 at 80 years old. With the trove of forensic evidence and chilling discoveries from Poset's dark room, the case breakers confidently pointed fingers at him. They even unearthed scars on Poset's forehead that matched descriptions attached to the Zodiac. Adding to the intrigue, they revealed a twist, an alternate message hidden within one of the Zodiac's cryptograms emerged when Poset's name letters were removed. However, the FBI swiftly doused the flames of excitement, affirming the case remained open and devoid of any fresh revelations. Local law enforcement echoed skepticism, casting doubt on the case breakers' findings. Riverside police officer Ryan Railsback dismissed the claims as predominantly reliant on circumstantial evidence, while seasoned Zodiac investigator Tom Voyant denounced the assertions as baseless. Notably, no eyewitness accounts of the Zodiac described forehead scars, further muddying the waters. Poset's association with the Zodiac dates back to at least 2014, when TV news anchor Dale Julian thrust him into the spotlight as a potential suspect. Poset's involvement in the original Zodiac investigation, with authorities interviewing him, adds another layer of intrigue to his story. The web of connections between Poset and Zodiac letters only deepens the mystery. A letter penned by Zodiac in 1974, boasting a score of 37, coincided with Poset's birth year, 1937. Remarkably, the infamous Z340 cipher arrived on Poset's birthday in 1969. Moreover, the Zodiac's chilling missive to the Chronicle arrived on the 9th anniversary of Poset's shooting by a police officer, a detail that sends shivers down the spine. Yet, Poset isn't the sole figure casting shadows over the Zodiac saga. In 2022, novelist Jarrett Quebec pointed the finger at Paul Dewar, citing several compelling parallels between Dewar's life and the Zodiac's infamous deeds. Dewar's interest in cryptography mirrored his writings, got people suspicious, as his presence about Zodiac's tactics. Italian journalist Francisco Amicone's probe unearthed Joseph Bevilacqua as another possible suspect, with intriguing links to both the Zodiac and the Monster of Florence cases. Bevilacqua's cryptic admissions and tantalizing connections to the Zodiac's crimes thrust him into the spotlight. Several more suspects have been considered over time, but to no appeal. The real Zodiac Killer has never been found. In April of 2004, the San Francisco Police Department officially labeled the Zodiac case inactive, attributing the decision to the overwhelming caseload and resource constraints. However, before March 2007, they reopened the investigation, keeping the case active in Napa County and Riverside. A significant breakthrough emerged in May of 2018 when the Vallejo Police Department announced plans to extract the Zodiac's DNA from stamps he used in his communications. Hopes were high for a breakthrough, just like the capture of serial killer Joseph James D'Angelo. Despite expectations of results within weeks, there was no outcome, and as of now, the Zodiac Killer has still not been found. Do you think that the Zodiac Killer is still out there? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more. Hey, it's me again. I really hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and I can't wait to come back and make more content for you. See you later. Bye.